When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
Good morning, I'm Dave Kaufman in for Elias, broadcasting from home as I have been really most of the last 3.5 months outside of when I've been doing the trivia show. Haven't figured out quite how I can do the trivia show with Dan Laxer sitting here with just my cat and not Dan feeding me the answers to all those trivia questions and making me look smart. But I think this segment is for everybody else, including me, who's working at home right now. It looks like those working from home could be expecting to do the same amount of work for a smaller salary. Let's bring in Dr. Richard Leblanc. He's a professor of governance, law, and ethics at York University in Toronto. Dr. Leblanc, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Dave. Nice to be here.
So why is it that workers who are working from home are going to be expected in this new post-COVID-19 world to expect to be working for less?
Well, that's a broad generalization, but let me tell you from the employer's point of view, and this is an American phenomenon that is now coming to Canada. There's a number of companies, both Canadian and American, including the federal government of Canada with some 250,000 employees, but also Morgan Stanley, Barclays, Bank of Montreal in Canada, Facebook, Shopify, and others that are saying, listen, a significant portion of you will have the option of working from home on a permanent basis. And geographic-based impact on pay is being considered now. And I'll give you an example. The average home price in Montreal, where you are, presumably, or the Montreal area, is about $500,000. The home price in Toronto, the average home price is $1.3 million. So if employees are in Toronto and they decide, if I'm working remotely, and I have examples of this where an executive gets a Toronto-based base salary, and then moves to Montreal, two Toronto-based employees, one living in Montreal, one living in Toronto, but it could also be Guelph, it could be Kingston, it could be Sudbury.
Sure.
So American companies are developing calculators that say, listen, if you make that move, it could affect your base compensation to the extent that cost of living is different. Now, tread carefully because that could have adverse effects on family status, on socioeconomic unintended consequences, that type of thing. So I'm not no one is generalizing, I hope, and saying, listen, if you're working from home, there's less performance. What businesses have found throughout the pandemic is indeed the opposite, that performance is not adversely affected. Necessarily. In fact, performance can go up depending on the nature of the task. If it's autonomous and focused, some tasks don't lend themselves to home-based work, such as collegiality, mentoring, innovation, spontaneity, the sort of water cooler conversations that are needed. So, but many jobs do, and so performance is being looked at. And pay. Now, from the employee's point of view, the employee is saying, which is quite correct, listen, I've now undertaken costs. I've upgraded computer systems. I've made investment in technology, in cost of electricity, office space, internet, etc.
Right.
And those that should be reimbursed. So the bigger point here is management teams and boards are beginning to look at assessing performance, how performance can be assessed, and also recalibrating that equation between the employer and the employee.
My coffee budget's gone through the roof as well.
Oh, exactly. And there's also issues that surface, supplies and things like that, but also mental health, depression, child care, parent care. So there's a whole bunch of issues that have arisen that that we couldn't have predicted pre-pandemic, that and health and safety and things like that, that even when you flip on a switch, and I know Toronto is very similar to Montreal, we're both hotspots. New York opened its offices yesterday, Monday, 2 days ago, and they have 10% occupancy. So office space, just because you're entering other phases, doesn't mean that everybody's going to come rushing, because you've got to have PPE, you've got to have social distancing, you've got to have contact tracing, sanitation, that type of thing. So the bottom line is that for 20 and probably much of 21, there's going to be some work at home expected of many, if not a majority of employees.
We're in conversation with Dr. Richard Leblanc. He's a professor of governance, law, and ethics at York University in Toronto. And there's got to be a trickle-down effect to this, though. Let's use Toronto as the example. Mm-hmm. If Toronto workers start moving further and further away to places where they're not commuting and the cost of living is lower, won't that in turn drop housing prices in Toronto and bring down the cost of living in the city?
Yes, and that's already started to occur with rents and mortgage rates and supply and demand. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. The other point, Dave, that you bring up tangentially is that office space in the densification, I guess it's called de-densification, will also affect availability of office space. I mean, look at the city of Ottawa, 250,000 employees in the federal government that are located in various jurisdictions across the country. And if you're now moving to jurisdictions where you can afford a home, and I also use Sudbury, my hometown, as an example. You can purchase a home there for $300,000. So I think it will level out the exorbitant home prices in Toronto and Vancouver, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, and Montreal as well. And I think that's something, perhaps that's one of the, if we're going to try and look for bright spots post-COVID, that might be one of them, that cities will once again be affordable for people, and not everybody will be off in the deep suburbs and having to, spend 4 hours a day in their cars getting to work.
Oh, imagine, like 2 hours each way, the time that frees up. But I guess my caution here is to employees don't necessarily assume that remote work that there's an adverse effect on performance.
Right.
There's not. So employers are scrutinizing line items right now, and they might make that inference. And in fact, I was just on the phone earlier today where that exact discussion was had by a senior management team, and there were a number of senior managers on the Zoom call that said, listen, my performance has not gone down unless someone can establish that. In fact, your measurable goals might have gone up. So there's a lot of implicit biases that are coming to the front now that need to be challenged, I think.
A lot of that depends on let's say if you have young kids who haven't been in school, then you might be pulled in a couple of different directions during your work hour, but that's not permanent. That's a very temporary thing.
But even then, if you're getting your task done and the work done, you're just doing it in a flexible way. So I think it's on a case-by-case basis, but I would, broad generalizations, I just don't think are helpful especially with pay and compensation and performance metrics, which tends to be very emotional for everybody and for senior executives. So I am cautioning boards, be very careful, because you could have a talent issue if you're crunching people and you're making unjustified assumptions.
Dr. Richard Leblanc from York University, a pleasure speaking with you this morning, sir. Thank you so much.
Dave. My very best. Take care.